One day, it feels like you've touched something sacred. Your mind is clear, your meditation is deeper, prayer feels alive, you feel closer to God than you've ever been before. And then, it disappears. Everything becomes dull. Your practice feels dry. You wonder if you've lost everything. You haven't. You're simply entering into the next stage. Everyone talks about withdrawal. Some people talk about the flatline. I've talked before about what I call the honeymoon phase, that period where everything suddenly feels alive again. But there's another progression happening beneath all of these stages that no one is talking about. A spiritual progression, a light that appears, disappears, and returns. Understanding that journey completely changed the way I view brahmacharya and semen retention. And if you stick around until the end, I'll explain how these stages differ between Taoist semen retention and brahmacharya. While both paths follow the same general progression, there are some important nuances that need to be understood. Be sure to like, subscribe, and all the bells and whistles if you're into my content, and we will surely continue to deliver more videos like this one. Before we continue, we need to first define what I mean by the light. This is simple terminology that I'm using to describe something that's incredibly difficult to put into words. But once you've experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The light isn't something you see with your eyes, it's something you experience. It's that growing sense of peace, that growing sense of clarity, a deeper presence, a stronger connection to God, and later, for many, the actual experience of His presence in your daily life. It's an inner joy that doesn't depend on what's happening around you, a natural desire to meditate, to pray, to serve, to become a better version of yourself. It's that feeling of being truly alive, truly at one. Now, every spiritual tradition out there points towards something like this. Some call it grace, some call it presence, some call it divine consciousness. And yes, some masters even call it the light. I mean, think about it. Most use the term enlightenment to describe the full culmination of this state. For simplicity's sake, today we'll simply call it the light. And throughout this video, you'll see why I believe this light doesn't just appear once. It appears, it fades, and if you stay the full course, it returns brighter than ever before. So how do we cultivate this light? While there are many paths that can lead us towards it, one of the fastest I've found is through semen retention. Now, when I say semen retention, I'm generally referring to one of two schools of thought. The first is Akhanda Brahmacharya. Akhanda Brahmacharya is the sublimation of all your sexual impulses in word, thought, and deed. The second is Taoist semen retention. Taoist semen retention allows for a balanced sex life with ejaculation frequency schedules, orgasm without ejaculation, and alchemical tactics to transmute urges that occur between sexual encounters. Now, both Taoist semen retention and brahmacharya involve the cultivation and transmutation of sexual energy. To actually receive the benefits of Taoist semen retention, however, you must also transmute the urges that occur between your sexual encounters. The purpose isn't to carry desire around with you throughout the day. The purpose is presence. When you're with your partner, be fully present with your partner. When you're not, be fully present with your life. If urges arise outside of those moments, they are meant to be transmuted so that your awareness can return to the present moment. Whether you're practicing Taoist semen retention or brahmacharya, it is this continual process of transmutation that cultivates the light. Both paths cultivate this light. Both are legitimate practices. They simply approach the cultivation differently. Throughout most of this video, we'll be focusing on brahmacharya, as that's where I've observed these stages the most clearly. Later, we'll return to Taoist semen retention and discuss some important nuances, so stick around. Now, before we get into the hidden stages, let's quickly review the overt stages. You can see the video attached here for a deeper dive into those if you want, but I'll just review them real quickly for those who haven't seen it. The first stage is withdrawal. This is where your old habits begin to die. This tends to last anywhere from a few days to a couple of months. Spiritually, this is often the first period of darkness. Then for many practitioners comes what I call the honeymoon phase. This is the period where everything suddenly feels alive again. Meditation becomes easier, your motivation skyrockets, the light shines brightly, for some the first time ever. Eventually, many practitioners enter the dreaded flatline. Energy drops, motivation fades, spiritually, the darkness returns. And then finally, for most practitioners, somewhere around the 6-month mark, they begin entering a much more stable phase. The highs become less extreme, the lows become less frequent. These are the changes that we can observe externally. They're the stages most people recognize. But underneath every one of them, another journey is taking place. The journey of the light. Now that we've covered the stages that everyone can observe, let's talk about the hidden stages. This is where we'll spend the rest of our time. We'll return to the nuances between Taoist semen retention and Brahmacharya later. For now, let's focus on what's happening beneath the surface of the overt stages. Hidden stage 1, the first darkness. The first hidden stage mirrors withdrawal. Spiritually, everything can feel dry. You may feel disconnected from God, meditation becomes difficult, your mind feels clouded, you question whether you're making progress at all. This is the death of an old identity. The old dopamine-driven version of yourself is beginning to fall away, but the new one hasn't fully emerged yet. Like a candle that's almost gone out, the light is absent or faint at best. Those who've already experienced this light and then suffer a major slip may feel as though they've fallen back into complete darkness. For many practitioners, this is the hardest stage of the journey. Hidden stage 2, the first light. Then, something beautiful begins to happen. Meditation becomes easier, prayer begins to feel alive, you feel more present, more peaceful, more joyful. Your inner light has been turned back on. Those who have experienced long-term, life-changing streaks before will often recognize this light almost immediately. Those who are new to the path, however, may not consciously recognize it until much later. They'll simply notice the overt symptoms of the energy, motivation, and mindfulness that occur. This stage begins somewhere around the 2-month mark. Although it can happen earlier or later, depending on where you started your journey, as another process is quietly unfolding beneath the surface. In yoga, this is known as the cultivation of Ojas. Ojas is the refined spiritual essence produced through the conservation and transmutation of sexual energy. When you experience the return of the light, Ojas is beginning to accumulate in your pranic system. If you've already spent years practicing semen retention and simply experienced a brief slip before returning to the path, you may move through these early stages much more quickly. The light often returns sooner because the foundation you've already built hasn't simply disappeared overnight. For someone beginning after years of PMO, this process usually takes considerably longer. The important thing is not comparing your timeline to someone else's. It's understanding that the cultivation is taking place, whether you can fully perceive it yet or not. But don't mistake this first light for the destination. It's merely a glimpse of what's possible, not the finish line. Hidden stage 3, the second darkness. Then, for many practitioners, the light seems to disappear once again. On the surface, this is what many of us recognize as the flatline. But today, we're going beneath the surface to uncover the hidden dimensions of this stage, the ones that are incredibly difficult to put into words. At this point, meditation begins to feel dry, motivation fades, the excitement is gone. Many people assume they've gone backwards. Many even give up. But what if nothing has actually gone wrong? What if the light hasn't disappeared at all? What if your relationship to it is simply changing? The novelty is fading. The foundation is strengthening. The work is continuing, even if your emotions no longer convince you that it is. Hidden stage 4, the light returns. Then, quietly, almost without you noticing, the light returns again. Not with the emotional intensity of the honeymoon phase, but with something far greater: stability, peace, presence. This light feels calmer, less emotional, less exciting, yet infinitely more transformative. It begins to feel less like something you experience and more like something you are becoming. For many practitioners, somewhere around the 6-month mark, this is also where the cultivation of Ojas begins expressing itself much more clearly. The foundation has now been laid, the initial formation of Ojas has now solidified, and from this point forward, Ojas continues to deepen, but also begins the longer process of refinement. According to the yogic tradition, a process that ordinarily takes countless lifetimes of gradual spiritual evolution can be compressed into a 12-year period through Akhanda Brahmacharya. This is why the great masters speak of the 12-year vow with such reverence. If you can remain steadfast on the path, the next 11.5 years become a continual refinement of the very essence of your being. One of the first manifestations of that refinement is a profound increase in clarity and intellect. Not merely intelligence, but a quieter mind. An ability to grasp the subtleties of life without any friction, a more penetrating awareness, a greater ability to perceive reality without constant mental noise. From here on, my friend, the cultivation continues, month after month, year after year. The yogic traditions describe this as a process that continues for roughly 12 years of unwavering, unbroken brahmacharya. The light doesn't stop glowing, the light doesn't stop growing. It simply grows and glows more quietly, more deeply, more naturally, until one day you realize you aren't chasing the light anymore. You're living from it within infinity, right here, right now, in the infinite, eternal, present moment. Earlier, I mentioned that these hidden stages apply to both Taoist semen retention and Brahmacharya. Both paths generally follow the same progression: the darkness of the withdrawal, the first appearance of the light, the flatline, and eventually the return of the light. If you're coming directly from years of PMO or sex addiction into Taoist semen retention, that journey alone can feel completely life-changing. For many people, it will be the greatest transformation they've ever experienced. That was certainly true for me. But after practicing both approaches over an extended period of time, I began noticing something. Although Taoist semen retention followed the same overall progression for me, the cultivation of the light unfolded much more gradually. The best way I can describe it is this. After about a year of Taoist semen retention, I would often feel as though I'd reached a similar place to just a few months of practicing Akhanda Brahmacharya. Not because Taoist semen retention doesn't cultivate the light, it absolutely does, but in my own experience, Brahmacharya seemed to accelerate that process and intensify it extremely. What surprised me even more was what happened when I made the transition into God mode from a long-term Taoist semen retention streak. It almost felt like the beginning of another journey. The light faded, withdrawal returned, meditation became dry again, and so on. Hence, the same hidden stages unfolded all over again. Except this time, the light that eventually returned felt much deeper, more stable, and more transformative than anything I'd experienced before. So I don't believe someone practicing Taoist semen retention is missing the light, but rather, in my own experience, it seems to develop more gradually than it does through God mode or Akhanda Brahmacharya. The reason I made the switch during that period of my life was simple. My startup had failed, life had completely knocked me off course, I needed total realignment. So I decided to take the same advice that I've been giving to countless others. Go all in with God mode for at least 6 months. If you're trying to get your life together or coming off of PMO, God mode. Your primary goal is spiritual realization? God mode. Now this has simply been my lived experience after practicing both approaches for over 8 years now. If you've genuinely practiced both, I'd love to hear whether your experience was the same or completely different. Leave it in the comments. The goal of this journey isn't to chase the first glimpse of the light, it's to keep walking, even when the light seems to disappear. Keep practicing, even when the meditation feels dry. Keep moving forward, even when you feel like nothing's happening. Because eventually, the light stops being something you experience from time to time. It becomes part of who you are. And when that happens, you no longer spend your life searching for the light. You become it. Thanks for watching.